Thank you for listening to my daddy's podcast. Please subscribe to our channel.
Hey, don't let these tears fool you. It's all dog around this mug. I'm good.
Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, Timothy J. Jones. And yes, I am the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And thank you so much for checking out the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. Much love to each and every one of you. I'm sorry for the late start, ladies and gentlemen. Just finished up the podcast Saints Talk with Timothy J. Jones on Bleacher Report. I encourage everyone that hasn't checked that episode out, please do. After this episode, just kind of talk a little bit about some of the things we're going to get into on this edition. But I really do appreciate you. Shouts out to everybody in the chat. Shouts out to everyone at home, at work, wherever you are, wherever you may be. On this edition, we're going to be talking about our talk continues with Kellen Moore, new head coach of the New Orleans Saints, as he tries to put together and assemble his coaching staff. He adds some names to his coaching staff, including a very, very important position that we all know needed to be addressed. And if you're watching this right now, you can kind of see it at the bottom of the screen what I'm alluding to. But it's very, very simple how you can be a part of the State of the Saints podcast for those that are new. All you have to do is put your comments in the chat. Please subscribe to the channel. Please hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. We just want the channel to grow, all right? Every time you hit that like button, every time you subscribe to the channel, it helps the channel grow. So just take a few minutes of your time. Doesn't matter what platform you're actually watching this on. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe. We're doing this across maybe like 3 or 4 different other channels. So if you're watching it on those channels too, please hit that subscribe button, and I would really appreciate that. But let's go ahead and get into it. Kellen Moore continues to build his coaching staff. And, you know, one thing that is very, very apparent is that he is going with some guys that he is very, very familiar with, that he has a rapport with, which, you know, I have an appreciation for. You know, you want to be able to roll with individuals that understand you, and vice versa. You don't have to worry about those difficulties of taking a few months to try to figure out each other's personalities and points of view. You kind of understand where each other stands. So that kind of cuts into the time that you would have trying to get yourself, I guess, that whole maturation process where, you know, I need to understand where you're coming from and you need to understand where I'm coming from. So that's a plus. Also, he is adding some guys that are extremely necessary to this team. I forgot to do this. I got to mention the fine folks at BETUS. Shouts out to BETUS. Sign up today and get up to 150% on your first deposit, up to 125% on your second and third deposit, up to $2,000. Use the promo code YouTube150. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the coaching hires that have taken place and promotions. If you're talking about Phil Galliano, he has been promoted full-time to the special teams coordinator. We know Galliano has been with the Saints since 2019, and he was the assistant special teams coordinator along with Darren Rizzi. But we know when Dennis Allen was fired midway through the 2024 season, you had Darren Rizzi, who was appointed as the interim coach, and Galliano was the special teams coordinator on an interim basis as well. But now he is interim no more. You can tell by a lot of the individuals, the reporters that follow the New Orleans Saints, They feel like this is a really good decision. A lot of the talent on the team likes Coach Galliano. A lot of the reporters, they speak very highly of him. So this is a really good move. And we know that Darren Rizzi is an extremely talented special teams coordinator. So learning under Rizzi throughout those years, I'm pretty sure it's going to pay dividends for the Saints special teams. And losing a very talented coach like Rizzi to the Denver Broncos, you want to be able to keep somebody around that can kind of make it and keep it consistent on a special teams basis. So congratulations to him. We mentioned on the last episode, Joe Thomas coming back to the New Orleans Saints after 2 seasons with the New York Football Giants. He was with the Saints from 2015 to 2023. So that means that he had a rapport with running backs like Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara throughout the years. They are very familiar with him as the running backs coach. Mark Ingram no longer with the team, but Alvin Kamara is. So he is a fan favorite also. So seems like he and I mean Kellen Moore, he is trying to create a comfortable environment for the players, bringing back some fan favorites, keeping some coaches around, the wide receiver coach, keeping him around, who is also a fan favorite, all right? And also bringing in some guys that were key to the Saints' success in the past, like Joe Thomas, bringing them back as well. We mentioned TJ Paganetti coming over as the assistant offensive line coach, as well as the running game specialist, comes over from the Philadelphia Eagles, helped them in a major way, have one of the best rushing attacks in all of the National Football League. So he brings that cachet and that credibility over to the New Orleans Saints. Scott Tozine, quarterbacks coach. We talked a little bit about him on the last episode. Brendan Nugent has been hired as the new offensive line coach. We know that the Saints offensive line definitely needs to kind of keep the momentum. They start trending in the right direction. Some players actually improved a little bit. They still need some work. Of course, we know about the left guard position and also the status of Trevor Penning after the 2025 season is indeed up in the air. I don't anticipate the New Orleans Saints picking up his 5th-year option. So this is a big year for a guy like Trevor Penning. So to bring in a coach like Nugent that can be able to help a player like Trevor Penning reach his full potential or get himself paid elsewhere is key. Also, to be able to help Talese Fuaga build on a really good rookie campaign. So Nugent is the offensive line coach. Then you got Chase Haslett appointed as the tight ends coach. Need some work on that side. Don't know what's going to happen with Juwan Johnson. He's up for a new contract. Don't know if they're going to use a franchise tag on him. To me, I don't think he did, enough for him to just be top priority. He's talented, don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like maybe that's something that the Saints would explore. It would probably have to come with a contract extension, but I feel like with that, it's really up to Kellen Moore. But you do have Foster Moreau, who serves as a leader on this team, as well as someone that stepped up in a major way towards the end of the season, and someone that Spencer Rattler really relied on in crucial situations. We know that game that had us on the edge of the seat with the Washington Commanders, we know Foster Moreau was the guy that scored that touchdown with 0 seconds on the clock. The connection between Rattler and Moreau grew as Spencer Rattler got start after start. So that tight end room needs to be improved. I'm pretty sure the Saints are probably going to pick up another tight end through the draft. So I would be looking at that. But the position that I wanted to kind of talk about in detail, I'll get into that a little bit later. We'll stop right there just for a second so I can acknowledge the chat. But those are some of the coaches that have been hired and have been promoted in some cases by Kellen Moore. Still don't know who the offensive coordinator will be. All signs indicate that it will be Doug Nussmeier, a good friend of Kellen Moore, has followed him from other organizations. A lot of anticipation of him being the offensive coordinator, as well as Brandon Staley on the defensive side of football. So I expect for the New Orleans Saints to fill some voids on the defensive side and offensive side from the coaching ranks coming up really soon once they get an offensive coach, once they get an offensive coordinator as well as a defensive coordinator. So looking forward to talking about that in the near future. But let me go ahead and read some of your comments. We'll stop right there and we'll get into the new hire that just recently happened over the last couple of hours if you're actually watching this right now. I'm going to start with Addison. Addison says the Super Bowl was in I guess New Orleans. Someone said something to get that salary change. It says, like I said, don't waste your time and energy on what Skeleton Bayless or Colin Coward or Stephen A. Snitch says. That's a good play of words right there, Jerry. Says big facts, Jerry. Not sure what they said. I mean, to be honest with you, I kind of been out of pocket when it comes to mainstream sports media as of late. I kind of just been focusing on my own thing here on the State of the Saints podcast, trying to grow this channel and trying to make myself undeniable when it comes to this podcasting world. But what I did here, if we're talking about Skip Bayless, the only thing I really heard, and if I didn't see the comment, and I apologize, but the only thing I can remember him saying is questioning Kellen Moore's leadership qualities. And, I feel like that's a fair assessment. I like Kellen Moore from what I've seen so far, but that is a question mark that is looming. I mean, you got to be honest. Like, despite the fact that you want him to work out, he is now our guy. If you're a Saints fan, if you support the team in any way, cover the team in any way, that's our guy. So you automatically get under the umbrella of comfort, protecting Kellen Moore at all costs. But there are some questions about that, right? Can you command a room? Can you be able to do things that are going to keep guys focused on the task at hand? What is going to happen during adverse times? I mean, only time will tell, but those are fair questions, and based on his personality, that's fair to question that. I mentioned this, and I'll say it again. I'm pretty sure some of you heard me say this, but I don't feel like you have to be a tyrant to be a good coach. I don't feel like you need to be a rah-rah guy. And I don't feel like you got to be breaking headsets and turning over Gatorade jugs in order for you to get a rise out of a team. I think that guys will follow you if they feel like you know what you're doing. Some of the best leaders that I ever known weren't those rah-rah guys. They were teachers, right? They had even keel personality, and they understood that they would focus more on trying to make sure that you get the big picture other than trying to scare it into you, right? So only time will tell. I think it's fair to question that. Also, being a big time fan of the Dallas Cowboys, I mean, Skip Bayless has watched Kellen Moore through certain times, but I will also say that I feel like being on such a high profile team and being that team that mainstream sports media covers quite often, sometimes, guys are just looking for hot takes and not so much, what is really going on behind the scenes. Like they put their own little interpretation behind it, just to kind of move the needle a little bit. I think a lot of these guys are kind of misunderstood on some of these mainstream football teams. They're not given the opportunity to really go through the motions. They have to be all that in the Hot Wheel track right away. If they're not, they can even win 12 or 13 games, but they're being critiqued on, they didn't go to the Super Bowl this year. So I think that Kellen Moore is a talented guy. I mean, they have to have something there, right? I mean, when he was with the Cowboys, they were winning football games. He goes to the Philadelphia Eagles and they win a Super Bowl. So there has to have something that he's doing right. I didn't really understand it. I will say this. I'm just being honest. At the beginning, I just wonder, like, what is it about Kellen Moore that just keep getting him work? I'm going to say it. Like, I'm going to be 100% transparent and honest. I'm not going to sit up here and say, oh, man, I thought Kellen Moore was the right answer. Anybody that goes back into the archives, you'll see that. You know, what made me kind of change my perspective about him is the way that he came to the team, the way that he just walked into the building. I was very, very, I was very, very, I guess like inquisitive about him as a person. Like very, very, like I was just wondering how he was going to approach this situation. Sometimes when teams are going through tough issues, tough problems, and they hire a coach, maybe that organization has been going through some turnover, bad practices when it comes to front office coaches, etc. That new coach comes in like, I'm the savior of the franchise. I didn't get that from Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore to me walked into here as if the Saints were in the black when it comes to the salary cap. Made it seem like there was endless possibilities when it comes to the roster of what they can actually do. And when you come in there with that type of personality, it's very easy to win a fan base over. You never got the indication that he felt like, oh, this job is y'all needing me. Like you never got that indication from him. It always seemed like he was very, very excited about the opportunity. He was appreciative of the opportunity. And I think that in itself won me over with Kellen Moore. And also just the way that he approached the podium, like, man, it wasn't a bunch of flair. You can tell like he's not very big on public speaking. Like you can tell like he said what he meant, and now it's time to go to work. And we ain't on all that, talking stuff and saying the right things and coming up with these metaphors and all that. He just wants to go to work. So that would won me over. Like before this, I was wondering, like, man, I never really seen him, develop guys. Like I still feel that way in a certain regard, but I'm willing to sit back and give him an opportunity to do so. And I feel like Saints fans need to as well. But when it comes to mainstream, they are big on hot takes. They got to keep eyeballs on the screen. So sometimes the more outlandish the take is, the more there's going to be shared, the more it's going to be liked. So, but you can't go by what they say all the time, man. I mean, it's entertainment at the end of the day. Some of those guys are charismatic showmen, and they're trying to make sure that they keep those ratings rolling. TJ, the draft so loaded with talent, I think we gonna hit in the fourth round. If you're doing the right things, if you're doing your evaluations the way that you should be doing them, then I agree. You can hit on a lot of these draft picks. I expect for the New Orleans Saints to really buckle down and be focused on bringing in some talent to this football team. I'm interested to see, though. I'm interested to see, Vivin, how the Saints are going to approach this draft process, because we're so used to throughout the last 16 to 20 years, the New Orleans Saints looking for a certain type of player, offensively and defensively. How will Kellen Moore's personality be able to mesh with Jeff Ireland's personality to bring in players that Kellen Moore feels he can actually work with? When it comes to the defensive side of football with Brandon Staley, you might be looking at something a little bit different, right? I mean, we know throughout the years defensively, the Saints, they do have a type when it comes to defensive linemen. 6'7", 6'6", long wingspan, I guess guys with athletic possibilities, right? I mean, they can be a freakishly talented athlete if they put it all together. How will Kellen Moore, and I'm just saying this because I really feel like he will more than likely is going to be the guy, Brandon Staley. How is his personality and the way that he builds a defense? How is that going to be able to work with a Jeff Ireland? And I'm just wondering, throughout this entire process and time, and I do understand that the NFL Combine is next week, and you got your scouts that they're ready to evaluate this talent on top of what they actually learned from some of the players at the Senior Bowl. But I'm just wondering, like, how are they approaching this draft? Because if you don't have a coach, you just found one, and you don't have a defensive coordinator, like, how do you know that is the type of player that they will want to work with, right? when you think that they will want to be involved. So I'm hoping that Kellen Moore is able to hire that offensive coordinator and Nussmeier or defensive coordinator and Staley by the end of this week. That way, they can all go to the combine together and be a part of that process together as a team. So looking forward to seeing that, and hopefully they can get that done. So there'll be no unanswered questions in that regard. We have to be patient. This is a new era of Saints football. You got to practice patience. That is true, Slim. I think that Saints fans kind of understand that for the most part. I don't think anybody is just ready to, just ready to be outraged. I think everybody understands what his team is right now and what is needed. So you got to practice patience or you're going to drive yourself insane. With all due respect, TJ, but the man record speaks for itself, and the man has a ring, so leading a room shouldn't be a problem. Brian, I mean, that's a good point, but you also have to look at the fact that he won a ring, but he wasn't the head coach, man. Like, we know that there's a difference. Like, that, to me, that's equivalent, and some people might think that this is out in left field, but it's like Dennis Allen winning a ring, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, Dennis Allen can win a championship, but would that make him a good head coach? We know that it won't, right? Because we have seen him in 2 stops fail. So you can't say, oh man, he's a winner. I mean, if we being honest, like Dennis Allen as a coordinator was a winner. So I what I'm saying is I get what you're saying, and that's a very good point. But just because you won a championship, being associated with a team that won a championship, but you weren't the guy, people are still going to question that, right? I mean, it's almost like it's the Kobe effect, right? Oh, you won a championship with Shaq. Can you win one without Shaq, right? I mean, it's kind of the same way. Like, can he be able to lead a team to success on his own? That's a fair question. We can believe in a guy. We can feel like he has the talent. We can feel like he has the ability to be able to get the team where it needs to be, but it all has to come together, and he has to do it on his own. I mean, there's a lot of really alpha male type mind frames inside of that Philadelphia Eagles locker room. A lot of personalities that are larger than life, right? Where he can kind of sit back and be that reserved individual. I mean, he's probably the only one in that locker room from the looks of it. But when you are the guy, like when you are driving the boat, right? When you are driving the plane, right? It's different. And people hold you to a different standard. So, like I said, it's fair, right? But I'm not saying, oh, just throw him away because of what he looks like, because I feel like that's what a lot of people are doing. They look at his personality, baby-faced, like, man, big smile. He has like, almost like that all shucks type look to him. And people kind of just write him off. Like, people probably look at coaches, they want them to be gruffy, you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe have a vein popping out their neck every now and then, but that doesn't make you a good coach. Like I said, I mean, I can understand people's hesitancy when it comes to him in certain regards, and they can have a wait and see approach. But at the same time, I'm willing to give the guy a chance. All right, but I can't just say, oh man, he won a championship, because it wasn't like he was the head coach of the team. Now, if Kellen Moore was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, stepped down, came to the Saints, I can be like, okay, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, we got something right here. But it's different when you are, in the captain's chair versus being a co-pilot here. So, I mean, he has to prove it that he can actually get it done on his own. Let's see. Thanks for big upping my walk, TJ. I like the way you podcast, says Kellen. Well, look, man, Kellen Moore, he all right with me right now. I like the way that he's approaching it, and I think that he has a lot of ability to turn the Saints around. Vibing facts. Matt Miller said this is a weak draft. Yeah, all right. Check back in a couple of years. Well, I mean, there's always going to be like those drafts where you say, oh man, it's going to be weak, and they end up having strengths. I think that it's strong when it comes to defensive players, like defensive linemen. Even in the case of offensive linemen, I think this is a very strong draft. I think when people say, oh, this is a weak draft, I think they look at it based on the quarterbacks, right? Last year, oh, this is a big, deep draft, right? Why? Because they had all those quarterbacks. You had the J.J. McCarthy's, the Bo Nix, the Michael Penix, the Jaden Daniels, the Caleb Williams, like the Drake Mays. So it was a deep draft, right? Oh, like they have all these quarterbacks, so it's a deep draft. But when the quarterbacks aren't as polarizing as drafts in the past, right? People just look at, oh man, this is a weak draft, because we know that the NFL likes to be driven based on the quarterback play. So I don't think it's a weak draft. I think that there's a lot of talented young players that are going to come into the National Football League and make an immediate impact on their teams that they get drafted to. So I don't believe that, but I think they base their opinions on the quarterbacks. Head coaching is totally different thing. He has to hit on his coaching staff to win. Well, yeah, Pammy, I agree with that, but I like the way that he's approaching it. He's associating and surrounding himself with guys that he trusts and guys that have proven that they can win. Like that's a plus too. Like what Brian said, like I said, it has validity, because you feel good about Kellen Moore because last time you seen him, he was winning. He won something of significance. He won the ultimate prize, the prize that as a Saints fan, you aspire the Saints to win, which is a Super Bowl championship, right? So he's bringing in guys that can actually make that type of impact immediately, right? Because you've seen them be able to contribute to the success of the Philadelphia Eagles. So you feel pretty confident about that, him bringing them in and be able to add some more guys to this team, like Brandon Staley. If he was to hire Brandon Staley, guess what? Brandon Staley is a Super Bowl championship coach. Like, he didn't win with the Chargers, but with the Rams, he was, right? I mean, Doug Nussmeier as his offensive coordinator. Doug Nussmeier was a part of his coaching staff on the offensive side of football with Philadelphia, right? He was a part of his coordinating crew. So you're bringing in guys that have a reputation and have won something, right? And when these guys come to the facility, when they come on airline, guys are going to listen, man, because you're coming from a place that they seen win a championship. So maybe, a coach that comes in doesn't really have a bunch of, accolades. You'll probably look at him sideways. I'm not sure if this can work, but for a fact, if you buy into what he's doing and a company that he's bringing in, you can win something of significance, because these coaches have won something and they won something. And if you do what they say and that they're trying to help you, then you probably will win something too. But in order for you to win something, Who Dat Nation sports fans, you got to be able to make sure that the right guys are on the field, and you got to make sure that they stay there. And we know over the last couple of years, the topic of conversation, and shouts out to good friend of mine, Dr. Jesse Moyes, the orthopedic surgeon, who comes on the show every now and then, talk to us, basically kind of simplifies some of these medical terms and some of these conditions to make us understand what is going on with our favorite players. But we've talked about the plethora of injuries when it comes to this Saints team. We know that last year the Saints were decimated by injuries. I mean, key players not being able to answer the bell. To me, I feel like there's negligence. Well, I won't say negligence, because I don't want to say like they just didn't care. I just feel like they didn't really pay that much attention to the little things that needed to take place in order for guys to stay healthy. And to me, you can't let your players down like that. When we're talking about football players, they're wired different. They are, unless their leg is hanging off or they just can't run at all, or their shoulder is hanging low and they just can't lift it at all, they're going to play. And it is up to you and your coaching staff to make sure that you don't run them into the ground. Like these soft tissue injuries that the Saints team has been dealing with throughout the years are completely avoidable if you are doing the right things. I feel like attention to detail as well as modern technology can be a plus. Like you can't, I understand like the world that we're in right now, especially like some of these coaches out here that probably come from the old school style of coaches where they just run you back and forth, put a little Gatorade in you, throw some dirt on it and keep it moving. But you have to be able to take care of these athletes in the modern NFL. And there's a lot of technology that can help you support these players. And I think the Saints are finally starting to realize that changes need to be made with the medical staff. And they went out and got Ted Rath, a guy who was with the Philadelphia Eagles, but he also had quite a few stops in other places. And people refer to him as the get right guy. Means that when he comes to your organization, he makes sure that guys are going in the right direction, trending in the right direction, and as healthy as possible. He brings in a 15-year a resume, right? I mean, he has worked with the Detroit Lions, the Miami Dolphins, the Los Angeles Rams, and the Philadelphia Eagles. And this is a guy, that a lot of organizations respect. And if the Saints can get anybody up in this thing that could be able to help these players stay on the field, is all right with me. You got to pay attention to the details, right? They say the devil, is in the details, right? If you notice that a player giving it his all, he ran so many miles, this week, right? Equivalent to every time you have him running up the field, right? We need to sit them down. We need to shut them down for a little while, making sure that these players are getting the therapy that they need, the massages, et cetera, making sure that you're not running them into the ground, making sure that they're not going back and forth into the medical room, right? The rehabilitation, center, portion of the building, like making sure that they're rehabbing, make sure that they're recovering, monitoring their sleep habits. All these different things are extremely important to the success of players. Like it's important to the success of you. Okay. Like it's important for you to get these things. Like anybody that works out, right? I mean, sleep is extremely important, right? Recovery is extremely important. And you can't just be like, well, the analytics say this, and you just kind of scoff at it because you don't understand what that is. That's fine. But you want to be able to get people inside of the building that understand the stuff that you may not know anything about. You can't just scoff at it or just kind of dismiss it, right? You got to be able to make sure that you're putting these players in the right position to succeed, to have a really good balance, not to a point where you just, sit them down so long, by the time the game starts, they got to rev up and now all of a sudden they're getting injured. You got to be able to have a balance here. So Ted Rath coming to the team is extremely important. And I think that it's about time that the Saints really put emphasis on their sports medicine department, right? In order for these players to stay healthy. I mean, you look at Philadelphia, they were one of the healthiest teams in the league. They've had their fair share of injuries, but for the most part, guys were able to stay on the field throughout the year. And you look at some of those Rams teams, the Detroit Lions, when he was there, those players were healthy when he was out there. So hopefully he can bring that to the New Orleans Saints, because you need your best players on the field more so than not if you're going to make the playoffs, be a contender, etc. So good move by the New Orleans Saints, finally addressing this situation. Hopefully they can nip this in the bud and it can be something of the past, but it was long overdue. Chase Young has the look and sucks. Guy is built like a beast, but his mentality is I'll try when I want. Well, look, I think that sometimes when you have God-given ability, you can do two things, right? You can maximize that and, make a lane for yourself, make a legacy for yourself, And then you have individuals that have God-given ability and flash it every now and then, just enough for people to get off their case, just enough for you to be in a conversation. But I just feel like when you have all the physical tools to be successful, when you have all of the talent in the world in order for you to be able to go out there and be undeniable on the football field, I think you need to use it. I always scoff and I become very upset with individuals who have abilities and talent and they don't utilize it. To me, Chase Young can play in the National Football League. I think that he can be beneficial to any team that he is a part of. But at this stage, I'm wondering, like, will he ever be the guy? Like, coming into the NFL, I mean, he was the number 2 overall pick after Baker Mayfield. People expected for him to take the league by storm. And to his credit, his first season in Washington was really good. I can remember Mike Tomlin talking to him when Mike Tomlin was mic'd up, said, and I'm saying this, I'm quoting it. He said, I don't never want to see you. I don't never want no player like you. Said, if I'm getting a player like you, that means that my team ain't good. Right? I mean, that's high praise coming from a guy like Mike Tomlin. But, all of a sudden he started dealing with injuries. You started to see people talking about him having a reputation of maybe taking some plays off. And that's something that you never want to hear, right? And you always want to live up to your potential. Do I feel like the Saints are going to bring him back? I think anything's possible. But just like Juwan Johnson, I don't feel like it's a top priority. Also, you have to take into account also that, this is a new head coach. I mean, these guys who we value, you can't expect Kellen Moore to look at them the same way we do, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure he has an appreciation for their talent, but he has a job to do. And does that job, requires him talking with Mickey Loomis, them considering bringing back Chase Young? I don't know. I mean, if you can get yourself a really young, talented pass rush that that is hungry, that's going to give you those 10 sacks, and you don't have to pay him as much at this time as a Chase Young, why wouldn't you want to do that? I understand he led, the league towards the end of the season and quarterback hurries, and that's great, right? But, if you can get a player that can get home to the quarterback and that you can actually build to be that dominant force on your team, that's always going to be in, the organization's best interest to be able to bring in a guy that they can build to be that franchise player. So I think he's talented, but I do feel like their reputation is starting to really start to follow him. So he's going to have to make things right and go out there and have a dominant season. I don't know if it's going to be with the Saints, but whatever team he lands with, he's going to have to bring it, man, or, their reputation is going to continue to build about him not really living up to his potential and, kind of taking some plays off. Says coaches are important, but he's not just grabbing coaches from the coaching cycles. Yeah, I mean, coaches are important. He not just, he has a plan. And, I think that's important. It's not just about some names, right? It's some guys that he knows. And also it's taking some brain power in order for him to come up with it, right? It's some strategy that is taking place here. It's not so much about, who's still out there, like you just mentioned, right? I mean, he has a rapport with these guys. And it's not just about him having a rapport with them. He knows that these are the right guys to get the Saints over the hump. That's important too. So I like what he's doing, right? I mean, he's trusting he's trusting himself, and he's getting guys that he knows that can win. Everybody except Derek Carr, who wasn't in New Orleans for the Super Bowl. A winning pedigree is one of those intangible traits that means everything. Yeah, I mean, having a winning mentality, not only, helps you build up your resume, build up your credibility, but it also helps individuals be able to follow you and believe in you. Like I always say, like, how do you know you can get out of the foxhole if you've never been in a foxhole? if you never had any adversity that you had to deal with, how can you tell somebody about adversity? Right? I mean, you basically just going and being Captain Cliche here. Oh man, the sun will come out tomorrow. Trouble don't last always, right? Man, how do you know this stuff? How do you know, right? But when you have a championship mind frame, when somebody has seen you win at the highest level, guys seen to straighten up a little bit, seen to listen a little longer. Like, people want to know that they're trusting individuals that know what they're doing. They're putting their confidence in you, their livelihoods in you, right? I mean, we know that team turnover happens every single year. We know that coaching turnovers happen every single year. And when you go into an organization, right, you're dependent on that coach, if you're a player, to put you in the right position to succeed. And also, as a coach, you want to make sure that, you have the right leader, that in the next year, I won't be looking for another job and I'm out here uproot my family every single time like this. Like, so it's a trust factor that you have to have. And, like, winning, it helps, right? I mean, being a former player, it helps. Those things help. Like Kellen Moore being a former quarterback, you can say, oh man, Kellen Moore wasn't the best quarterback in the NFL, but he was a quarterback. He played in the National Football League. He was a really good college quarterback. Those things matter. So when he starts talking about playing a quarterback position, yeah, you probably have Derek Carr, who had a better career than he did. And, Spencer Rattler, he has some really good upside, probably more upside than Kellen Moore had as a quarterback, but he knows what the heck he's talking about. And I find it I find more backup quarterbacks, guys that weren't on the field as often, end up being some really good coordinators and coaches in the National Football League. Maybe it's the fact that they got a lot of mental reps and they can see not only what they actually know what to do on the field, but what the process looks like. So it helps. So winning helps. Being in the foxhole, telling somebody about what's going on in the foxhole help. Those things help you to be what you are as a coach, as a human being, as a leader. Those things are extremely important. And without them, there's a lot of eyebrows being raised and questions being asked. The more new faces, the better, because the old ones weren't working. Well, inevitable. I do agree with that. I do agree that there was this team needed a facelift. I also feel like just the newness of this team just makes people feel like the Saints have a chance. Right. I think the biggest issue watching this team, following this team throughout the last couple of years, is the hope seemed to be lost when it comes to rooting for this football team. It's more like I'm just here because I've been a Saints fan my entire life and I'm just going to watch them. Right. But it didn't give you that pleasure that it did in years past. Right. When you really sat in front of your television, when you marched into the Superdome or whatever stadium you watched your favorite team play the Saints, the New Orleans Saints team, wherever you were, you've had a belief that the New Orleans Saints were going to win a football game. Like, it wasn't like, I hope they win today. It was more so like, if the Saints didn't win, you were mad and you were shocked at the same time because you couldn't believe, like, man, I thought they had this thing in a bag. Right? So I think the confidence of the Who Dat Nation is growing because it feels like this is something different. Don't know if this is going to work out, right? I mean, we only can hope and wish that things turn out the way that the New Orleans Saints need them to go, right? But to know that, it's a change, it's a culture shift, it feels pretty exciting. Take a few more, then we're going to go ahead and get up out of here. It says our older players are family to us, but we need to usher in the new. Get some young talent to push the older players. Yeah, James, and that's, just like anything, right? Anything when it comes to your family, it's important, right? You know what I'm saying? These decisions are important, right? You're not just going to make a decision that, you know, without thinking about your family or putting them, you know, so their best interests at heart. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're just not. When it's your family, it hits different, right? When your son leaves, your daughter leaves, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm talking about my older people. When your kids go off to college or something like that, like, you're happy for them, right? But part of you like, man, you know, like, I don't think I'm ready for them to go yet, right? You know, it's because that's your family, that's your heart. You know what I'm saying? That's something that matters to you. That's something that you value, or any family member, right? You have a closeness, right? I mean, it's almost like, you know, like a pet, or, you know what I'm saying, or a good friend. Like, it may be even somebody, you know, like, over the course of time, you develop a relationship, and, you know, things start to affect you in ways that you didn't even imagine. When it comes to some of these Saints players, we, throughout the years, root for them, cheer for them, like, look at them go through the ups and downs, see how they started at the beginning and how they emerged as, you know, one of the best players on the team, or that player that may not be the best, but gives everything that they have. Man, we find ourselves cheering for them a little bit louder. Or, you know, it's like watching that movie where you pick that one individual and you root for him because it's that character that trying to figure himself out, right? And you see him grow, and, you know, see him, you know, or her, you know, live up to their true potential. And then when they get older, it's like, man, they become a fan favorite, they become a staple, they become one of the faces of the team. And then when they leave, it's like, man, that's, you know, like, what, you know, you find yourself on social media defending them when people start saying they're getting up there in age, they need to go in a different direction. But you can't look at this organization, you know, players like that. Like, it's a business at the end of the day. It's a business. Like, that's tough. That's the tough reality of football. It's not just about, you know, just watching games on Sunday. It's a business. When guys get hurt, when guys get up there in age, you got to make some tough decisions. And it can look cold. Like, a player can give you everything that they have, right? And they end up getting hurt, you have to cut them. And you get upset, you know, like, man, I can't believe the organization did that. Like, to me, I look at what's going on right now with T. Higgins in Cincinnati. For 2 seasons, they have put a franchise tag on this man. For two seasons, they put a franchise tag on him. Think about how good T. Higgins has been since he's come into the league. The man deserves a long-term security. He deserves it. Now, are Cincinnati putting the franchise tag on him so they can pay him? Then that's cool. But what happened last year? Right? But it's a cold business. And sometimes you got to realize that it's just that, a business. And you gotta let some of those players that you value have to ride off into the sunset and still cheer for them. You know, like, if they go somewhere else. Like, I don't have any ill feelings towards any New Orleans Saints player that goes somewhere else and finds success. I don't want a guy like, man, you leave the Saints, I just want you to suck for the rest of your career. Like, no. Do you think Isaiah Foskey can have a revival if our defense shift to a 3-4 defense, which is what he played in Notre Dame? Well, look, in order for, like, and I'm not trying to sound facetious, but in order for you to have a revival, there should be some resuscitation going on. Like, I'm sorry, he didn't code it out since he came to the New Orleans Saints. Haven't seen the field, okay? Couldn't see the field with binoculars. I'm sorry, Isaiah, but it's the truth, man. Can't see the field. Couldn't see the field with the MapQuest GPS. All right. I mean, he just couldn't see it. Couldn't find it. Couldn't find the field. Couldn't see the field. All right. Now, do I think a part of that has something to do with the coaching and the developmental process of the Saints? Yes. Which is the reason why, if you've been watching these last few episodes of the State of the Saints podcast, you have seen that I ain't really been criticizing players like that, right? I talked, even when I talked about Kendre Miller, I talked about what his reputation was. But at the end of the day, I'm not sitting up here saying that he's a lost cause. I don't think any of these, like, as crazy as this sounds, I don't think any of these young players are lost causes. I'm looking at it almost like the Saints organization have to look out for these players. They have to make sure that they're putting these players in the best position to succeed. And if they're not doing that, then shame on the organization. Like, you got to give these players an opportunity to be able to be what the organization needs them to be. If they played a certain way in college, like you said, Ricky, him running a 3-4, that's his strength. I don't understand, like, why when they come to the New Orleans Saints, the Saints have to make them into something that they weren't. Like, wouldn't it be easier for you to just draft a player that's just naturally at that position? I don't understand it. Like, it's not like, oh, well, he played center in college, but, you know, in his freshman year, he played guard. And then they switched him to, like, it's not like that, right? It's not that way. It's like, dude ain't never played this position ever in Pop Warner, in high school, in college. Now in the NFL, you switch him to a completely different side, or you have him playing a different position. You know, he used to being a Mike. Now you making him the Sam or the Will linebacker. Like, what are we doing? And then I feel like it's really on us at times, like when we criticize these guys and we talk about them, but we really just absolve the organization. But I feel like it's a combination. It's a combination of the player not getting to where they need to be, but it's also the organization not helping them reach that full potential. So I don't know what Isaiah Foskey is. Like, I don't know. Like, look, we seen Zach Barnes sit on the bench and play special teams for about 3-4 years. Man goes to the Philadelphia Eagles in his first season, he a first team All-Pro. We seen as much as people try to criticize this guy and they talk about how they don't like him and stuff, but C.J. Garner-Johnson spent most of his time with New Orleans in the nickel. When he became a natural safety, he started catching interceptions and really living up to his potential, especially in run support. So all I'm saying is we got to be fair about this. If we're going to criticize these players, we got to look at why they are playing the way that they are. Why isn't the light coming on? Right? I just think that the players need to be developed, and I think it's up to the organization. It is their responsibility to develop those players. So I don't know. I don't know what Isaiah Foskey can be. But I will say this: it can't be a revival if he was never revived. So you can give your takes about why that revival has never happened, but haven't seen him on the field. You know, maybe he just needs an opportunity. And maybe, you know, Kellen Moore, who comes in oblivious to the Saints coaches, the old practices, the old regime, he's looking at these guys like he just meeting them, like handshakes and how you doing, and I like the way you play, right? Other than that, like, you don't know these players like that. So this could be really big for Isaiah Foskey, for him to take this off season, you know, getting some really good shape, you know, get with a really good coach that can help him and things that he lack, and be ready for off-season activities and training camp, and play like his hair on fire, and probably end up seeing the field. So this is a great opportunity for him. Alante really a safety too. You know, I think that Alante, I think that he can play outside. I think he can play inside. I think he can play safety as well. You know, I think that he would be a good safety. I think that's something that could be explored. But I think in his second year of being a nickel, he was coming into his own. Like, he was playing some really good, like early in the season, Alante was playing some really good football as a nickel corner. But then, you know, you had Lattimore with the hamstring, and then Paulson Adebo getting injured, and then they have to slide him to the outside, and he's playing the nickel for the last 2 seasons. So he's been working on technique on how to get better there, and then they slide him back to his natural position. But, you know, so much time has passed. Like, now you have to kind of get readjusted to it. So I think that he's talented, man. I think a lot of these guys are talented. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry is talented. I'm not really to like just wash my hands with him. I just think that people just need to understand he was a rookie. I think the Saints, if they bring back Paulson or Debo, I think there's something there. So there's some talented young players in the secondary. I've been saying that about Lante for 2 years now. He would be much better at safety. I don't know if he'll be much better at safety, but if you give him some time, I think that he can be a talented one. It could be like one of those situations with PJ Williams, right? When PJ Williams was, on the outside, man, crime scene, nickel crime scene, right? He started playing safety, like playing that box safety, man. I mean, PJ was like, he was an enforcer, man. They had him out there playing some of his best football. So, sometimes you can put guys and slide them into positions and it works for them. But Alante, I mean, he's a good nickel corner to me. But I think he can play safety. I think he can play safety. If the Saints do that, but if you can actually draft a safety or find a safety that can give you some real production, I don't feel like you need to move Alante Taylor to that position. But yeah, I mean, but if you want to give it a try, I mean, I think he's capable of doing it because I just have a belief in Alante Taylor. I'm gonna take one more, and it says who that safety can play positions, and he did a little quarterback in high school and wide receiver. Well, look, if he played wide receiver, that's a plus. That also helps, like especially when it comes to the ball skills. Paulson Adebo, I feel like that's the reason why he's so good, at generating those turnovers. Like he played wide receiver when he was in high school. I want to say he played early in his college career. That kind of helps, man, when those guys have really good hands. So if you're playing a cornerback position and the ball comes your way, you can actually become a receiver and snatch the ball out of the air. But I want to say thank you all for checking out the State of the Saints podcast. Really do appreciate it. Much love to each and every one of you. Thank you so much. I ask that you hit the like button. If you enjoyed the State of the Saints podcast, if you enjoyed this episode, please hit that like button. If you're new to the channel and you checked out the episode, I ask that you subscribe to the channel. Every little helps to help this channel grow, and I'm just asking for your help. If you watch the show often, if you're new, please hit that subscribe button. If you have not already, hit that like button. Let's get those likes up. Let's get the viewership up. I really do appreciate you on that. You can also follow me on social media on X at TJAY Jones 8. You can also check me out on Saints Talk with Timothy J. Jones. That is available on Bleacher Report. You can check that out every single Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Bleacher Report, as well as the NFC South Roundtable that is available on YouTube as well, a part of the Roundtable Sports Network. Until next time, all I got to say is,
thank you for listening to my daddy's podcast. Please subscribe to our channel.
Hey, don't let these tears fool you. It's all dog around this mug. I'm good.